Welcome, Spurs fans, to another edition of Casa De Spurs. I'm Trace Running, joined by Stephen Hale over there. Sorry, I can't use the pseudonym in real life. That's not cool. What's going on?
What's up, man? I mean, you could. It'd be a little weird. Trace, I actually had a weird thing happen twice recently at Papa John's Pizza. I placed my order for carryout, and the first time I went in, they were like, what's your name on the order? And I was like, Steven. And they're like, Stefan? And I'm like, no, it's 100% Steven. And they're like, oh, sorry, it's in our system as Stefan. And I'm like, no, that's Steven. And I just thought, well, that's a one-off. It literally happened the next time with a completely different person at my Papa John's. So I was like, I don't understand. Anyways, Alfonso Delquan, ADQ, Steven. We're all here, Trace. How about those Spurs?
The Spurs are 8-6 after a victory over the Portland Trailblazers earlier this afternoon. Short-handed Trailblazers, but still a win. No CJ, no Nurkic. But Steven, I would love for you to tell me a couple of things that you saw in that game that made you excited.
We want things that made us excited. Well, it was hard to find a lot of exciting things from the San Antonio Spurs versus Portland Trailblazers outside of the fact that they won. Because if you are a fan of the veteran players on this team, then you would have been very excited because they all scored at least 20 points and led the San Antonio Spurs to victory against the depleted Portland Trailblazers. LaMarcus Aldridge mid-ranged them to death, and it was interesting to watch. Rudy Gay went bonkers with like 100 million threes. But we also saw a pretty decent game from DeJounte. Almost had a triple-double.
Almost.
What did he finish with?
9 boards, 9 points, and 11 assists.
Yeah, 9 points, 9 boards. Like, I mean, he was right there. So it was good to see them get a win on MLK Day. I was excited about that, but I'm also a little bit concerned about the style of play that they reverted back to. The Houston game was a little bit more upbeat and exciting. I think the league knows that Christian Wood is a very good basketball player. Everybody keeps saying this guy is the most improved candidate. Like, he's leading. I'm like, this guy's an all-star. Like, this guy is. I haven't seen anything that he really can't do. He's still a young player and everything, but we're not going to sit here and talk about Christian Wood. But he gave the Spurs fits. I think that entire team gave the Spurs fits. Trace, what I've noticed, I guess, as a trend is how this team plays to the level of their competition. They can hang with the Lakers, even in the game they lost. They can hang with the Clippers. They beat the Clippers, but then they flounder against a Rockets team that has 8 players. It's a little odd. I don't know what to make of that. Do you have any thoughts on why that's the case?
I think they're a physically strong team. I think that's one of the reasons they're able to hang with the Lakers and the Clippers of the world. I mean, like how I think it's probably inspires me to see Keldon Johnson just go after Anthony Davis or LeBron James or Kawhi Leonard or literally anyone who's like 6 inches taller than him. And I think what happens is when they play teams that they don't have to try and intimidate with physicality, because like you have to try and do that with the Lakers. They're so big. You have to do it with the Clippers because Paul George and Kawhi Leonard they're super strong. Serge Ibaka is the third name that also a super strong guy. You have to like play them hard. When you're playing whatever Nwaba from the Houston Rockets, it's a totally different game. And Christian Woods, he's a pretty physically imposing player, but that's never really been that was never the hallmark of the James Harden Rockets team. And obviously he's not there anymore, but like it's just not Houston Rockets style. And they let themselves get beat mentally really, really badly. And I think it was the same case against Minnesota.
Yeah, there's this. I don't know that I'm putting too much stock into this home and away thing that's happening. For some reason, the Spurs are way better on the road than they are at home, but there's no fans anywhere, and it's a little odd to try and express that. But I'm looking at the way that this team is playing, and every time they go into an arena, it's almost like they go, all right, how is the other team going to do today? We should play kind of like that. And it's a weird dynamic because it's showing that they can play a lot of different styles. You know, they can play big with the Lakers, and they can play fast. They can play. Today we saw them play slow. Like I said, LaMarcus Aldridge mid-ranged everybody to death. So I guess that's a good sign that they can play in a lot of different ways, but it also is concerning whenever we're seeing this team play. You know, they gotta stretch out a win against the 8-man Houston Rockets, like, who don't even have an identity. They just lost their franchise player. Like, they've got guys that weren't even on the roster last year. Like,
John Wall wasn't playing.
John Wall's not playing.
The freshly acquired Oladipo not playing.
He's there. They have a guy. I don't know how to say his name. I won't. But the other guy that they got in the trade, he like checked into the Houston to the Toyota Center like hours before the game. Like, he didn't even practice, didn't even go through a shoot around, and yet the Spurs are, they're barely able to hang with them. So I think it's just, I still think the Spurs are trying to find a little bit of their identity as well, and trying to figure out what they're going to. They have more identity than they've ever had, but they still have this weird clash of young players and older players who all need minutes. There's respect minutes, then there's earned minutes, and then it's like all this stuff meshing into one. You're 14 games into the season, so you're like, how good are we going to be? I don't know that anybody had them, fifth in the West after 14 games. I think that's pleasantly surprising, but they gotta work out some kinks.
Yeah, I think part of it is like kind of what you started to allude to, is that the Spurs don't have an identity yet, and so they're allowing the other team to make the first imprint on the game and then reacting to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's also what's leading to, I mean, like, they pulled away late in the the season opening game against Memphis. They pulled away a bit here in this game against Portland, but they haven't like had a big win. You know what I mean? Like, they should have run away from a lot of the teams they played so far, and they refused to. They've bricked their way into loss against both Houston and Minnesota in half of the games I played against them. There's no blueprint to what they want to do except for go out there and mark your man and go for it, which in some ways is more interesting than what we've seen in the last couple of years from San Antonio, because they were trying to force themselves into a system that was like very, very, very obviously not going to win basketball games. This is a different kind of frustrating, but I think that the upshot is that letting them figure out who they are will help them come up with an identity, instead of telling them what their identity is, even though they don't fit it.
Exactly. I read a stat. I found a stat the other day, and I'm not a stat guy, so I was actually proud of myself just for producing a stat. It was some of my best work, but I actually pulled out a notepad and a computer and wrote stuff down. But the Spurs are 6th in the most points scored by their top three players who are 24 years older and younger. So I basically looked at all the teams in the NBA, and I said, the 3 best players that are under 24 years of age, where do the Spurs rank into that? So the Spurs this year, their 3 best players have been Murray, Keldon, and Walker. That is 6th best in the league. Boston was number 1 with Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Minnesota with D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Anthony Edwards. Atlanta has John Collins, Trae Young. Devin Booker has Mikal Bridges, and Phoenix has Devin Booker, and then Ayton. And then the Pelicans have Brandon Ingram, Zion, and Lonzo Ball. And yet there's the Spurs. Their young core is sitting right there with 540. Just put it into perspective, Boston has the highest number of 618 points. So less than 80 points separate them from being having the top three scorers under 24. And yet they go and play against the Portland Trailblazers, and they get more than 80 points production from the 4 veterans on the team. So I think I'm just kind of stuck here going like, and they did win big against Portland for what it's worth. It was almost a 20-point game. But I look at this and I'm like, what's better for the long-term future of this team? They're probably not winning a title this year with the roster that they have. Spoiler alert to everybody. So is it more beneficial that they get 4 veterans to squeak out, to beat the depleted Portland Trailblazers, and 4 veterans go and score, a little over 80 points? Or do we want to see Jakob Poeltl work through those kinks? Do we want to see Lonnie Walker try and make some errors whenever he's not playing good? Do we want to see DeJounte Murray struggle through some things about running the offense? Or Keldon Johnson? Keldon Johnson did not play great today. It wasn't a great game, but I want to see him get the minutes and work through it rather than having Rudy Gay get his 6 3-point shot. That's not a knock to Rudy Gay, but I feel like that's the identity struggle that this team is facing. Is they've got these young guys they're ready to send out there and, hey, let's go play, let's go learn, let's grow, let's make mistakes, but also we got to get these guys their minutes and their touches too. And it's like these things that's the identity part that they have to work out. That I don't know they found an answer for yet.
Yeah, quick shout out to Rudy Gay. He made his 1,000th career 3-pointer today.
Yeah.
But having said that, I would much rather see Lonnie Walker take more than 7 shots than have Rudy Gay take enough shots to score 20 points.
Yeah.
And I know Lonnie was, he was 2 for 7 today. So, obviously that's not the kind of percentage that, but if you give him more shots, maybe he starts finding something. I would tend to say yes, that's what we want to see going forward for this team. Also, Patty Mills set a record today for most off the bench threes by any player in NBA history with one team. He passed Manu Ginobili with 930 for the Spurs.
That's a really big accomplishment, and I think that's something that our fan base has taken for granted. And of course, I'm saying this right after I just said that all veterans need less minutes and less touches. But what Patty's done with this organization is nothing short of appreciative and impressive, and we're all grateful for it. I think we retire his jersey and put it up in the rafters whenever he's all said and done. And I think I just feel bad that the guy's trying to play for a contract, because that means he's probably not going to be back with us next year. I don't know that the Spurs would bring him back, but he's pretty good, and he's been shooting lights out this year too, for the most part.
Yeah. But if you get Derek White back, and Derek White is what you want Derek White to be, where do you have? It's kind of good for Patty to, maybe it's a blessing in disguise, as I say, for him to play his way into a contract with another team, freeing up that spot for some of the other folks to get some more minutes. Also, just thinking, I know that this was a big veterans minutes game. Patty Mills and LaMarcus Aldridge, former Trailblazers. You think that had anything to do with them getting some more run against the teams that they started their careers with?
Yeah, and I also would say this too, while you're waiting for Derek White to come back, why not showcase him a little bit? It's not like it's going to hurt their trade value that LaMarcus and Patty both went over 20. So, I've joked about it on Twitter today, but the Blazers need a big man, especially with Nurkic. I always get him and the Joker mixed up. Especially with him lame right now. I'd pick up the phone and call San Antonio and be like, "What do you want for Aldridge? Hey, why not? Him and Dame want to play together anyway." So I don't understand why that hasn't happened yet. But I guess people smarter than me.
Well, who would you want from Portland in that situation?
I really think that Zach Collins is going to be a piece down the road. I don't know that he's going to be that much better than Jakob Poeltl probably is, but the thing is, the Spurs have a lot of good guards. They've got the Keldon Murray and Walker, and you still have DeMar DeRozan if you're going to keep him or not, and then you've got 2 other guys, Derek White and Devin Vassell. That's quite a bit of pieces in your backcourt. I feel like you could solidify your front court a little bit with some guys that do one particular skill set 2 skill sets, and that's where they screen and rebound. that's going to be fine, especially if you can cut some costs and you can save a little bit of money by doing that. I don't know why I'd go out and pay a big man whenever you can get those guys. But I'd also like Robert Covington back. I think he would be a great stretch for this team. He could guard a lot of guys. I think that would be a really interesting team if they were able to move off of Aldridge and acquire Zach Collins and maybe Robert Covington. Maybe you have to put another couple pieces in the deal, but I don't see why that isn't a conversation that couldn't be had.
Yeah, I could see Rocco as a kind of piece that if Pop could, kind of shape, be a really good San Antonio style player.
He would be like what they wanted DeMar Carroll to be. Like the DeMar Carroll experiment failed like day one. I don't know. When Pop writes his book, I hope he includes a little segment about what went wrong with DeMar Carroll. But I think Spurs fans thought DeMar Carroll was going to be kind of what Robert Covington is, and I would love to see him in a Spurs uniform. I think that would be fabulous. Great contract too.
Yeah, just to remember we were listening to that Tim Duncan on the Ringer podcast last week, and Tim was talking about how Raja Bell was the one that got away, right, for Pop. He was like, he's like, you set the bar for free agents that we bring in. So how did DeMar Carroll what did he show Pop that was more
that Raja didn't?
Raja didn't. Yeah, I'm very knowing that was the gold standard for, man, we really messed that up. I'm very curious to see what
now Pop is grasping for straws over here, trying to find the next Raja Bell. Is it DeMar? So we'll see. We'll talk about some more of this in a second, Trace, but before we do, I want to interrupt real fast and talk about Whataburger, because who doesn't love Whataburger? But hey, Trace, it's a new year. If you're like me, you put on a few, you put on the quarantine 15, which on top of the dad bod 20 wasn't great. So maybe you're trying to limit your options and eat a little healthier. I have something for you from the Whataburger menu. It's the apple and cranberry chicken salad. That's right, Trace. We're talking salads today. This is a grilled chicken breast with shredded cheese. Also has your cranberries and your apple slices, as well as some matchstick carrots. Get it with your favorite dressing. Man, they've got a lot of good dressings, but I'm pretty much interested in trying this honey pepper vinaigrette. I don't know if honey pepper would go good on this particular salad, but it's just interesting nonetheless. So if you're around Whataburger, hit the drive-thru late and cut a few of those carbs back. Snag the apple and cranberry chicken salad from Whataburger. So we've talked about some of these guys, Trace. What happens next? Because coming up down the road here, you already mentioned it, Derek White returns. Devin Vassell has played pretty nice. He has turned out to be a fun piece, very active on the defensive end. I think I read a stat today that he's had one steal in every game for like the last 10 games, at least one steal, or he's got a ton of deflections. They're going to have to figure out what to do with this these rotations here coming up.
Yep. Devin Vassell seems to be the kind of guy who is going to earn a lot of minutes going forward. He plays just the way he plays defense alone is going to get him some consideration. I'm a little confused to use a word about Lonnie Walker's role right now. Of course, when DeMar DeRozan was out, he pretty much
really got shined. Yeah.
And actually, and even in DeMar's first game back, Lonnie that was the first Houston game. Lonnie was the only reason they even had a chance to win that one. And then he's pretty much been silent ever since then. Of course, that, coincidentally, the 2-game win streak are two of his worst games in the last, I don't know, week and a half or so. So now I'm like, okay, now I'm nervous. If Lonnie starts going off, does that mean we're in for another long night because no one else is going to get anything going? Or are they going to be able to finally sync up and let multiple guys have some good nights at the same time? I'm very curious to see where the minute situation between Vassell, Lonnie, and DeMar DeRozan. I mean, I don't think DeMar DeRozan's not losing minutes. So I guess what I should say is I'm really interested in what the minutes are going to be split up for Devin Vassell and Lonnie Walker going forward.
Yeah, I think Lonnie has shown. Look, Lonnie's talent is undeniable. He's insanely talented. He's good. He's a good basketball player. There's no question about that. But his his athleticism and talent is. The Spurs don't have another player who's like that. They don't have another player who's that fast and can jump that high. So his talent alone is one of those things where you're like, okay, we have to give this guy minutes, because he's at any minute he can have a steal and go the length of the court. At any minute he could just take off and score a layup. Like, he's that good. But because of the nature of their roster, he's reduced a lot of times to being like a spot up 3-point shooter. And like, he's not Joe Harris. Like, he can knock down a three, but you're not going to run floppy action for him off of like Kyle Korver. He's not a Steve Kerr or a JJ Redick, some guy that's just like, don't leave him open. Like, I feel like the Spurs are wasting a little bit of that on Lonnie, and that's unfortunate, because it also hurts him trying to figure out what his role is if he doesn't have a role. And now, if what you're saying is true, and I'm actually on board with you, I think Lonnie and Vassell are more likely to take minutes hits when Derek White returns than I think DeJounte Murray is going to. Pop really liked playing those guys together last year. And so we've also learned too that Keldon Johnson has to be on the floor. He's way too versatile. He can guard big guys. And I think when White returns, I think Lonnie might be the guy that goes back to the bench. And that's unfortunate, but it also means that he should have a little bit more freedom to play DeMar's role on the bench unit. And I think that's where we really saw him thrive, was those games where DeMar was out. Lonnie was just like, my turn, here I go. And I know everybody wants him to be a starter. I understand that, but DeJounte and Derek White are incredible backcourt guards on the defensive end. They just are. And that's not a knock to Lonnie. He can hang, he can keep up, but something about like his, I don't know how to place it, but those two guys, Derek and DeJounte, they have a great chemistry. And I don't know how you keep Keldon Johnson off the floor and you're not going to play Lonnie over DeMar. So it just kind of seems like how it goes.
Right. Yeah. I have this, I don't know. I feel like Lonnie Walker could become one of the Spurs' most dangerous shooters if he puts the work into being that. And if he does that, if he starts being the kind of guy where, maybe it's not as automatic as some of the guys you were talking about earlier, where if you don't put a body on him, it's, a guaranteed three. But if he can command Patty Mills level of, we got to make sure like somebody's watching this guy when he starts to sneak off into the corner, that's when he's going to be really, really dangerous, because then the guy who's doing that, whoever's assigned to defend him is going to have to, like, he can't press him because Lonnie will, jump out of the building and go over him. And then he can't just like hang out, because if Lonnie starts making down, knock down threes from the corner, then
yikes,
then he's a big problem. So, I'm sure I could say that for a lot of people in the NBA, but I feel like when Lonnie is shooting well, like, it looks great. It looks beautiful. Yeah. It's like bottom of the net every single time when he's on. Yeah. And so, that it's there. We're not talking about like a hypothetical, like, if this guy could only figure out how to shoot, and that guy's name is DeAndre Jordan. Like, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So that's why I still feel like he could absolutely be their most dangerous player. And if his role in the San Antonio Spurs comes down to being, the Manu Ginobili for the next 6 years, you could do a lot worse.
Guys have had worse. Guys have had worse careers. Yeah, 100%. I think too, like, I just think this is all coming to a head eventually. There's going to have to be a decision that's made. Lonnie would, if he had Patty Mills's green light and his quick trigger, like, Patty has never seen a shot he didn't want to take. Lonnie is not there yet. He also hasn't been in the NBA for as long as Patty has. So I don't need him to do that right now.
Yeah.
Sorry. But what I'm saying is all going to come to a head is you got 4 veterans on the team. Well, eventually you're going to have veterans on your team. So it's not as simple as just going, we keep all the young guys and we get rid of all the old guys. Like, it doesn't work like that. And then also to think that somebody's just going to come through and give you a decent trade offer for your old guys. Like, I feel like eventually one of those guys, one of the Spurs' young 6 players they're probably going to have to be packaged, not just packaged to like get a better return, but that you're also going to have to clear up minutes for the other guys. So if all these guys are playing the same role, we've already said that DeMar DeRozan is one of the top 10 best free agents available in this coming around, and he's on your roster. So I'm running out of reasons not to keep DeMar. But if you're really serious about trying to move Aldridge at the deadline, what are you going to move him for? Just another expiring contract? You might as well just hold on to him. So if you're actually trying to upgrade your roster and you're simultaneously trying to find minutes for guys, then why wouldn't you attach one of these guys to a LaMarcus Aldridge or a Rudy Gay as they're going out? And maybe it turns a second round pick into a first round pick. Maybe it turns a I don't know. I'm spitballing here, but maybe it turns turns Zach Collins into Zach Collins and Robert Covington. Like it's going to sweeten your deal a little bit more. And I feel like that's the part that we're coming to. I feel like this is let's see who's got what. Let's see who can do what. Let's see what skill set everybody has. And then and eventually there's going to be an odd man out. As much as we love these guys, DeJounte, Derek, Lonnie Walker, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, really those five, and then depending on how you feel about Jakob or Luka, but those five guys all play relatively the same position, and then you're always going to have I think you're going to have a veteran who's going to teach them how to be a professional. Patty Mills, DeMar DeRozan. Someone's going to be the odd man out. It is, and I think Lonnie could be a Manu Ginobili type of player. He could also be trade bait. Like, it's just the reality of the conversation.
Yeah. And it's not like I don't get the impression that a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge is like the veteran who shows you how to be a veteran in the NBA. I mean, he famously did not want any part of even talking to Damian Lillard the entire time they were in Portland together. And they
didn't even fly back on the team plane together.
Yeah, then they were good teams. Like those were teams that were getting to the second round of the playoffs like every year. And they they didn't want anything to do with each other. Now I know LaMarcus has been very public about learning from that he said that he's reflected and he kind of regrets that was his attitude towards younger guys in the league at the time. But I don't know. It doesn't feel like he's the one. Like,
yeah,
if there's an emotional leader in that locker room, it's obviously Patty Mills.
Yeah, and he's the voice that I think people would listen to. He's the only one on that roster that has a ring, unless somebody else got one I wasn't aware of. And he's the longest tenured Spur, so it's him. I just think the other thing that we're trying to figure out right now is consistency, Trace. We've seen all of these guys do it now. All of the young guys have played really well in some form or another. But not all of them have put it together consistently. We can see Lonnie go for 25, 27 points, whatever, and then he might go for 6 the next night. That has to even out a little bit more. I would rather him score 20, 20, and 13 than I would have him score 25, 27, and 6. I want that average to come a little bit more. So those are the growing pains, and this is the time to grow.
Yep. You couldn't have said it any better myself. So Steven, just to do a quick look ahead at the week, because this is fun. So kicked off the week already with a win over Portland at Golden State, home versus Dallas, and then Washington, and then New Orleans next Monday.
Back-to-back, Sunday, Monday.
Yeah, if Washington can even play, that's
that's right.
But
around to.
four more games coming up in the next 7 days. I feel like we're looking at a solid 3-1 here.
Yeah, it seems that way, right? But then as soon as we say 3-1, they drop all 4 because we all predicted that they would be 1-3 or 1-4 after the last road trip, and here they go. So yeah, I'd like to see it. Hopefully they can play. You just mentioned a great point, though. The COVID stuff and why teams can't field a roster is exactly the reason why the Spurs need to stay vigilant here they might find themselves on an opportunity. And I think if they get through this week, see what their record is at 20 games, it's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do moving forward.
Right. More than a quarter of the season over, which is significant whether you like it or not.
It's true.
So, Steven, thanks so much for hanging out and talking with Spurs with me tonight. Special shout out. We're going to do a nice Wednesday night special edition Casa De Spurs hangout, talking about the Tony Parker documentary. I watched it last night. We all know Steven loves himself some Tony Parker, so that should be fun. If you guys are interested in joining in to that with us, check the Casa De Spurs Twitter for more information on how to register for the Zoom call. We'd love to talk about Tony Parker with you. One thing I'll say is I am jealous of Tony Parker's water slides. That's a fun backyard.
Kind of dope. That was a really good backyard.
Yeah. Not so jealous of his quad surgery and recovery. That did not look like a lot of fun, but the water slides make it all worth it, I think.
That's right.
All right. Anyways, Spurs are 8-6. Looking forward to another good week of Spurs basketball. Go Spurs, go.
Go Spurs, go.